here. And so today we have with us a conversation about operating expenses, as you may have picked up in the early part of the conversations. And the idea is Brad has come up with a tool that helps establish benchmarks, or I'm sorry, has benchmarks to help us understand, is your business based on size and location and industry, are you paying more or less than others in your space? So I'm going to turn this over to Brad and welcome his presentation, and then we'll have opportunity to ask questions with him.
Thank you, Hal, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to be here, and hopefully you guys will kind of learn something. I enjoyed kind of learning a little bit about your businesses and things that you're seeing or experiencing, and really kind of just a little bit of my backstory. I've spent about 15 years in corporate roles working for companies like UPS and Coke and DHL, and I always kind of wanted to be able to take that experience and be able to help more of a small to mid-sized businesses. And one of the areas I guess I kind of fell into was this idea of helping them to optimize their operating expenses. And so my business, Ascendia Advisors, is focused on being more of a cost savings matchmaker. So I have some stuff, consulting I do internally, but most of it is through service providers who specialize in different niche areas and are able to go out and help organizations to reduce their expenses. And so today I wanted to introduce one of the partners I've worked with, especially over this past year, as a lot of companies have been hit hard by the pandemic, and beyond kind of PPP loans and tax credits that may be out there, looking for other ways to reduce their expenses. And so excited to share with you a little bit about this company. It's called Optimised. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, and then we'll even have time here to watch a video.
Got it?
So hopefully you can all see my screen here. And so Optimised, it's an expense reduction technology, and they were founded by a group of people that they've been working together in an expense reduction space, specifically within the shipping industry, for over 30 years. And so they decided to take that experience they have and pair it with using kind of the big data mindset and being able to leverage that together. And so with being able to just take a general ledger or any other sort of OpEx report that shows the different line items a company has, they're able to benchmark it against this large data set of over 6 trillion entries, and being able to help companies understand, based on their geography, their size, their location, their industry, whatever they're doing, and being able to see in different expenses. And this is just an example of some of the categories that they're able to help with, everything from telecom to utilities. So the first half of it, as you'll see in the video, is the benchmark piece. It's identifying these opportunity areas, and then the second part of that goes more into being able to renegotiate with those existing vendors on their behalf, if that's something that they want to pursue. So again, it's on a contingency basis, so there's no cost for this analysis to come in, and that's really kind of what they're focused on doing, is coming in and taking a look at these expenses, being able to they do the analysis, and then they recognize that with going in to establish these new targets for their clients, and then being able to continue to optimize that by ongoing monitoring these different vendors and looking for additional savings opportunities, even beyond kind of the life of the contract. So with that, let me go ahead and share the video that'll kind of get a little bit deeper into it.
What would you say to your business saving money and accelerating growth?
We can.
As a business operator, using the resources that you have wisely means not overpaying for those vital business expenses that keep your company moving forward. But ensuring that you're optimizing your savings across every expense category can be a daunting task. That's where our optimization solution can help. It's based on solutions by entrepreneurs and business operators, people like you. We recognize the optimization challenges businesses face because we've faced them ourselves. That's why we built a platform around our experience that data and benchmarking are the only ways to truly know that what you are paying is what you should be. How do we know that? Because we already built a data-driven technology business around true big data modeling and benchmarking, saving thousands of clients more than $150 million. Now we've applied that same experience to our unique solution, amassing trillions of dollars of expense data from millions of businesses, benchmarking every expense category. This gives us the insights to identify your best possible rates. And with your assistance, we will implement them at no risk or cost and without adversely impacting your existing vendor relationships. But that's not where our solution stops. We'll continue to benchmark your expenses against our $6 trillion data lake to continually find new savings opportunities and areas for expense optimization. On top of that, our work is performed on a contingency basis, so if we can't save you money, you don't owe us a cent. You already have plenty of responsibilities on your plate, and let's face it, scouring through your general ledger to uncover possible opportunities where you could save money is a painful and time-consuming chore. This often falls to the bottom of your endless to-do list as you try to keep your organization growing. All we need to begin is a general ledger report from any accounting software. Within a few days, we'll present you with a savings analysis for your review. Next, we'll handle all the negotiations on your behalf. After that, we'll begin performing monthly compliance and optimization audits, so you'll never have to think about overpaying in any expense category again. So call or email today, and we'll help you analyze your expenses, recognize your savings, and optimize your business so you can maximize your company's potential.
All right, let's see. So with that, I'll just open up the floor for any questions you may have.
Got it.
I have two questions.
Sure.
So question number one is where does all the data come from, the comparative data? Because it seems like the claim on the video is that there is this plethora of data. Where does that come from?
So it's a combination of sources. So it's some both public and private data that they have that they've cobbled together. So from some sources, I mean, think of like LexisNexis that has a lot of like Dun & Bradstreet public data that they buy, and then also data just from experience working in different industries over time.
Okay. And then second question is it talked about vendor relationships. So if you've got a small business and they've established these relationships and the company identifies your company identifies possible savings and they go in to negotiate on your behalf, how do they manage to preserve that vendor relationship when they're trying to negotiate lower prices for services already being rendered?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that we get quite often. And really it comes down to, the engagement process when they work hand in hand with the company and deciding which vendors they want to look at reducing. And for some they may carve out and say, we don't want to go after that, or there's specific areas that they don't want to deal with. But it's always at the discretion of the client whether or not they want us to engage with certain vendors. And then we go in.
Let me see if I can rephrase the question. If Jonathan has a vendor and you come in to say, Jonathan, we can lower your cost, are you and Optimally negotiating the cost to Jonathan's current vendor, or are you giving Jonathan guidance to be able to say there are other options out there for Jonathan to talk to his current vendor?
So we are negotiating with a current vendor, but in the case if Jonathan says, you know what, this guy's a fraternity brother, I've known him for years, I know that I could probably get a better deal on whatever the service is, but I don't want to go after that. That's one option. We can say we're not going to touch that. The other option is we go in we negotiate on his behalf directly with that vendor. Our goal is not to switch suppliers, because we know oftentimes organizations have picked that supplier for a specific reason. And we know that if we kind of did that, I don't want to say a bait and switch, but we switched them to somebody else, that most likely within the next few years, they'd end up in the same boat with higher rates. And so that's the nice thing, is because continue to optimize and kind of analyze and look for additional savings opportunities. Maybe there's a new rate plan, maybe there's something else that becomes available, and just being able to kind of stay on top of this vendor management, which a lot of organizations just have the bandwidth to handle. And oftentimes there may be only negotiating certain categories once or twice a year, if even that. And so they may not be able to understand or know, what is a good deal in a given category.
Jonathan, does that help? Got it. So we have time for some other questions. What else is on people's minds? We heard different reasons of what your OpEx costs were during the year. Other questions from people?
What's a typical? Oh, go ahead, Hank.
Sorry, Jared. So what's the typical, you're going to ask, I think we're going to ask the same, what's the length of the engagement? Do you do it for, 1 year, 3 years?
It's typically 3 years.
I was actually going to ask something different. I was curious, what percentage savings or do you typically see?
Depends on the categories, but savings are generally about 15 to 20% of OpEx expenses.
Wow.
And so Hank was in, I think, one of the categories that you mentioned, which is payroll. I'm sorry, was credit card processing. How does that do? How does that typically work out for you, Brad?
So if you look at the different here, let me just come back to that slide that shows it, some of these different ones on here. So that's one of those areas that's super competitive, and that one generally has less savings overall.
You want to share your screen again?
Yeah, I'll share it since I know I went over that one quickly. Pull up that one. Okay.
There we go. Good.
Yeah, so this is just a sample of different categories where we've been able to help organizations, and you'll see, so like credit card processing or even like waste management, some of those tend to be very, very competitive, and the percentage of savings in those generally is fairly low. But then there are other areas where the opportunity can be quite high, just depending on who their incumbent vendor is and what they're doing, or the types of rates they're on. So a lot of times we'll see larger than kind of average savings in areas like telecom or utilities. And again, the nice thing is, because we work hand in hand with the client, or if we're working with like an advisor's, like a CPA is making an introduction to somebody, and let's say they don't want us to touch certain areas, we can carve that out, which is nice. But at the same time, it also can serve as a way for them just to get a view of the landscape and understanding what other opportunity areas are. So for like a CPA, it might be helpful for them to know, if they're looking at the operating expenses or general ledger for a client, what are potentially some areas that they may be overpaying in, and then being able to have that conversation with their client or engage us to help them optimize that.
Are there other questions for Brad? So I'll bring up, do you find that you're moving people to different vendors, or is it mostly trying to negotiate a vendor from their current price?
It's primarily working with our existing vendor. That's what we focus on. There are times when the client may choose to leave a certain vendor, but our first, I guess, line of defense is we're going to kind of show them, kind of based on the industry, what they should be paying, and then we're going to negotiate with that vendor. And I think it's been very rare, at least in my experience, of the over $150 million that they've negotiated in savings, where they switch vendors.
is that an opportunity? Because I mean, I look at Hank, for example, and for him to know what somebody's already paying in fees and wanting to then compete, does that make a good opportunity?
It can be it can be an opportunity, and we have stuff like sometimes they may come to us and ask, and it's at their discretion of asking. But like I said, our first thing, the first thing we're going to try to do is keep them with that existing supplier. But if they say, you know what, I'm okay to move away from them, I don't necessarily, want to stick with them, then we are willing to show them and introduce them to other vendors. But I'd say, probably 90% of the time they've chosen that vendor for a specific reason, and we're able to negotiate them down to a point where it makes sense and they're happy.
Other questions? Leslie?
Brad, what is your revenue model and pricing structure?
So that's another great question. It's pretty straightforward. So Optimally does a 50% rev share with a client, and as mentioned before, the contract's over 3 years, but they continue to work and optimize those savings for even beyond that.
Thanks, Leslie. Other questions?
Are there target industries that are better than more ripe than others for savings?
I would think ones that, in terms of OpEx, those ones that haven't already beat up their suppliers. So if you know that they already have narrow margins, or there's may not be a lot of room and opportunity. And I think the second trigger that we've seen is companies that have been growing quite fast, where they just haven't had control on it. Those two kind of tend to be the bigger indicators, more so than industry specific. So a lot of those categories you saw are pretty standard across organizations. Telecom, waste management, office supplies, those types of things. The one kind of large category we don't help with is labor. Obviously, we don't help them in that regards.
So that leaves John out. But
Well,
you
actually, I
did
was thinking on behalf of our customers. So you had a big group of telecom or IT and technology group in there. Inside that category, is there, where do you go to in your mind first? Is there one that jumps out?
One is, I guess, like software as a service is a large category, where a lot of times people are signing up individually and they're not getting the best pricing. And so that's kind of a low hanging fruit. Second to that is, if they have any ongoing contracts on different hardware systems they may be leasing, that's another area.
Thanks.
Other questions? Is part of the negotiation to change what they're buying? So for example, John was talking about, so when you talked about software as a service, are you also showing them that they may be in the wrong purchase, as not just the per unit of what they're paying for?
Sometimes. So it may be that they've individually gone out and acquired different software platforms. Some they may need, some they may not need, because they just don't understand what they all offer. And sometimes it's helping them to right size, or maybe they didn't get the best. Usually it's just that we find they didn't get the best pricing on them. They could find somebody that's like a lot of times like a third party reseller would be able to get them better deals on all of them together. So if they're bundling things like, let's say they're using a couple of solutions from Salesforce, they've got other things in their marketing tech stack that, it's just combining them together where we're able to bundle them. And that really tends to help save them money as well.
Any other questions? So I'm thinking, if I was in Tamara's case, where I've got businesses that are I need them to keep paying their loans back, which is a good thing. Yeah, would they have bought the wrong service? Or do you interface with a business coach because sometimes they purchase the wrong thing, or they're going in the wrong direction? Or do you look at a banker to give advice as far as, again, business decisions, to know that I've even purchased the right stuff?
Yeah, we would look to like a business coach or somebody who's more in line kind of within the business to understand if the purchase is right. We're looking at it more from just an operating expense category, and saying, is what they're paying is in line with the market. but it would take somebody else who's maybe able to help them right size and say, do you even need that technology or that service for whatever they're doing? So we can work hand in hand. And then I guess in the example of, you mentioned the banker, being able to help clients, continue to be solvent, be able to pay back those loans, or, just be more profitable. And I think, that's actually one of the areas, to your point, Hal, that I guess have seen a lot of success come from just working through partnerships with a lot of organizations. Is, a lot of, whether it's a CPA, a banker, others that just want to add additional value to their clients, helping them, obviously growing top line revenue is one piece of the equation, but also reducing expenses is another big contributor to the bottom line.
Well, I know Don's holding his chin because there's something going on in his head about where all the numbers are coming from. So you guys may end up connecting after this. So very good conversation. We're going to wrap up for the day. We're always respectful of your time. So if you're trying to reach Brad, here's his contact information. And one final thought, Jared, I do love that picture. Once I realized what you were showing is how people are cutting costs and what's practical. Quick heads up, next week, we've got a business consultant who's talking about aligning success with change. And we already know what change is like. The question is, how do you coexist with it or make something good of it? Kelsey will be back in a couple weeks. There's some real interesting stories on workplace bias. And if you haven't thought about it intentionally, then it's impacting you. It's just amazing what we do and think. Talking to Kelsey about some of these stories that she's got, it really does make a difference in decisions you make, and even in the processes you have that you may not have done intentionally, but happens. And then the other two topics coming up, some other business employment law conversations, and then marketing trends in June. So Brad, thanks so much for sharing your thoughts. Everybody, appreciate the questions and the conversation. It's going to be another great week. Keep having some fun. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
I
Have a great
got
afternoon.
Lee Miller. Where's Lee? Did you leave?
Yep, I'm here.
Hey, Lee, do you